Congratulations, you've earned it. That sweet, long-awaited retirement is finally here, bursting with dreams of sandy beaches, endless adventures, and zero alarm clocks. But wait, before you dive headfirst into paradise, stop. One wrong move in your financial prep could shatter it all, leaving you stressed, broke, and working at the supermarket just to make ends meet. Don't let regret steal your joy. In this episode, we're going to cover the ultimate checklist of must-dos before retirement that will lock in your blissful, worry-free future. Your dream retirement hangs in the balance, so listen to this one till the end and take good notes. I'm Brad Lineberger, Certified Financial Planner.
And I'm Matt Callahan, Certified Financial Planner. Welcome to Navigating Retirement. Let's dive in.
Matt, I'm so excited about this one because we're going to bring our 20 years of doing financial planning to everybody. And we're going to show people the things, the common mistakes that we see people make so that they can hopefully avoid those mistakes in the future.
Yeah, and oftentimes a lot of these are overlooked. So I think people are going to get a lot of good info out of these checklists or items that we're talking about.
Absolutely. So let's just get after it.
Yeah.
The first one is people need to make sure that they have a good retirement plan, like a budget, a spending plan. They need to know how much they spend.
You said the B word. People don't like the B word, but you're absolutely right, because this budget in place, it's not necessarily keeping you strict to what you have to spend or what you can spend. It's just being aware of where the dollars are going, and then that will give you the tools necessary to make adjustments if need be.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of tools, I don't care how they do it. I mean, there's technology out there. You got mint.com or what? Actually, that's gone, but it's technology like that, YNAB, things like that. Or you can be the good old-fashioned pen and paper, or you can be spreadsheet. I don't care. What I like to do is have people take a look at their credit card statements and bank statements for the last 12 months to just get a general sense for how much have they been spending.
Well, speaking of technology, I just recently adopted something in our own household, taking the statements from your credit cards, debit cards, or anywhere you're spending dollars. You can actually upload those into an artificial intelligence like ChatGPT, and it'll tell you, can say, hey, as a budget tool, can you put together where our dollars are going? It'll put together really clearly from all your statements where dollars are going.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So if you're comfortable, uploading those statements, but I mean, I am, and it's worked out really well.
Well, and then the other thing people do on the subject is they forget to add in the fun stuff, like, oh, I want to travel in retirement, and maybe I want to play golf, or maybe I've got some sports or hobbies or whatever. They forget that. And then they also forget healthcare and medical costs.
You're right. The healthcare, if you're planning to retire before Medicare age, I mean, those individual policies can really take a big hit out of the spending limit.
Right. And then while we're on this subject, then I think the next mistake that people make is they don't properly account for inflation. And so I want to get your opinion on this, but my thought is you got to choose at least 3% on your core living expenses. Healthcare and medical, you can choose 4 or 5 because historically those are the long-term averages. But what would you be using right now for inflation assumptions?
Yeah, that's a tough question. It's really individualized for your plan, how conservative or how aggressive you want to be.
Yeah.
You mentioned 3%, which I'm okay with 3%. If you look over the last 30 years, about 2.7% on average.
Yeah.
And it may seem like it's a lot more expensive now, but inflation isn't just a one item kind of thing. Each different thing has its own inflationary increase. So groceries, for example, seem like they're going up a lot more faster than some other things. So if you wanted to, wanted to get really fancy with Excel, or if you have financial planning software and you think inflation is going to be high or higher than 3%, if you're doing 4, 5, 6, I think you're being too aggressive for a 30-year time frame. So maybe you take like the next 5, 7 years of a higher inflation rate, and then you can lower that inflation rate for the rest of the duration of retirement.
But to your point, run different models to at least, and I think most people go, oh, this is what I'm spending, and they forget, or maybe they just don't know how to properly account for inflation.
Yeah, and then when you're doing inflation with your retirement or with your budget, you want to have inflation on those current or those core living expenses, increasing those. But if you are going into retirement with a mortgage, you don't want to have that inflation amount on there, because typically you're going to find yourself on a fixed rate or fixed interest, and that can eventually go away. So you don't want to have that inflation rate
forever.
Forever.
Okay. Question for you, as people are creating their checklist, how much cash does somebody need to have on hand as they're about to head into retirement?
Yeah, great question. So we all hear that typical 3 to 6 months of living expenses.
While you're working.
While you're working, yeah. I think that's too low going into retirement. I would rather see closer, a year and maybe even 2 years. And we can talk about that if it sounds like insanity to have that much cash. But with cash, I mean, for the longest time, we weren't having any interest rates on it. So it was kind of just sitting there and didn't have a big purpose. But now we're seeing, 3-4%.
Absolutely. Schwab's offering north of 4 right now.
Right. So let's take advantage while we can with that cash. But even if there was no interest, I would argue that the cash is more powerful than you think, because if you have that cash and markets are not playing nice in the sandbox.
Meaning they're going down.
Yeah. So you have that cash available to live on if you need to. And so that cash can be worth a lot more if it prevents you from making a poor decision in the overall portfolio.
Well, and something you talk about a lot is, for retirees, this is dangerous. It's the sequence of returns risk. And I hear you coach your clients all the time. I do the same thing. Use that in times of market volatility when the markets are down. Use that cash to dip into so you don't have to sell shares of the great investment companies that you own.
Yeah, that's a great point. So this is when you are first going into retirement, sequence of returns risk. If markets are down and you're taking distributions from there, it's basically taking a double hit on the portfolio. So I wouldn't worry too much, or I would worry less later on in retirement, because you should be anticipating those ups and downs. But it is important at the very beginning of the retirement.
Right. And then on that note, something that we both think is really important is to stress test your plan. So you can't just use we use really conservative assumptions for growth. Most folks end up doing much better than that. But the thing of it is that the assumptions in the plan are not linear. Meaning, let's say a retiree is going to get 6% growth in retirement. It's not 6% every year. It might be up 16 or down 16. So they got to stress test their plan through a variety of market cycles.
Right, exactly. So we run it through what's called a Monte Carlo simulation, and really just a fancy way of saying 1,000 randomly generated market scenarios. So like you said, some good years, some bad years, and everything in between. And we really just want to make sure that the plan works no matter what the markets are throwing your way, because that's the one thing, or one of the things we can't control.
Right.
And so our probability of success that we like to have as a minimum is 82%. Yeah. And some people, you say it all the time, they're like, well, you know what? Getting a low B in school, I don't that's fine in school. I don't want a low B in my retirement.
That's right.
But I look at it a little different. I mean, depending on the client's goals and aspirations, what they're trying to accomplish. I mean, 82, that just means there's an 18% chance that you need to maybe make adjustments along the way.
Right.
Yeah. So I wouldn't look at it as potentially running out of money. We just may have to make some adjustments.
Right.
Or maybe you're okay with that low along the way, because it's a bell curve. So those tips and the tails, very unlikely outcomes. Maybe you're okay with that median case a lot of the time.
Now, here's a really important thing that I think everybody needs to know. We see it's a common mistake. People forget to account for some of those big expenses in retirement. I mean, hey, your home's aging. You might need some new windows. Maybe you need a new roof. What about the car? How frequently do you want to get new cars? The big trips, as we mentioned before, but those one-time expenses.
That's a great point. I think that was one thing that a lot of people don't keep in mind when they're going into retirement, and at least having a line item in your plan to be aware that those expenses might come up.
Yeah, and then, so when they're thinking this through and they're thinking about taking money out of their accounts, people need a strategy and a plan for which account am I taking money out of, first, second, third, et cetera. How do you coach people to think about that?
Yeah, and with all things financial planning, the real answer is it depends on what the plan is. But just let's think high level, just general speaking, is most tax efficient to most tax inefficient. Okay. So what I mean by that is maybe spending your cash first, and then moving on to your taxable investment that you're exposed to capital gains rates rather than your ordinary income rates, which are usually lower. And then maybe moving on to the IRAs, and then follow that up with Roth IRAs. And the thought behind this could be an older thought. We'll go into it of what makes sense going forward. But holding the Roth last, that way you can grow as much tax-free wealth along the way.
Absolutely. And then in that process, am I going to do Roth conversions? Do I start to do conversions early on in retirement to shift more money into that tax-free bucket.
Right. And I mean, we were loving IRAs and 401ks for the long time, but we're starting to see that maybe this isn't the best investment vehicle because all the dollars coming out of that account are taxed at ordinary income.
And with required minimum distributions.
Yes, down the road, most likely 75, if you're born 1960 or later, you're going to have these required minimum distributions.
Massive. We're seeing like six-figure, heavy six figures.
Mm-hmm. So then now you're forced to take these dollars out, and maybe you could have been more strategic in those 10 years prior to retirement or prior to the required distributions.
Yeah, and on this theme about which accounts am I taking money out of, if you didn't want to do a Roth conversion, that's fine. But if you're in lower brackets, like say, which by the way, with the passage of One Big Beautiful Bill, we now at least, they say it's permanent, but we have at least 5 years of the current brackets, 10, 12, 22, 24, 32, 35, 37. And if you find yourself in a 12% bracket, certainly 10 or 12, maybe you're taking money out of your IRA to live on early in retirement or doing those Roth conversions.
Yeah, and we used to think, 10, 12, no-brainer, pound the table, do those Roth conversions. But now with this tax code being in place for at least the next several years, 22 we used to say is a gray area. Maybe it's not so much of a gray area.
Take it while you can.
Yeah, 22 could be a good, maybe even 24.
Because I think in our lifetimes we're going to see it a lot higher at some point in the future. So take advantage.
Yeah, if the tax code did sunset as it was supposed to, I mean the 12 was going to 15 and 22 going to 25. So I mean you're looking at already 3% savings in taxes, which doesn't seem like a lot, but 3% on a big number can be a big number of tax savings.
So the next one, you talk about this a lot. It's, look, while we're working, we're getting a paycheck from work. We're getting from our employers. How do we replace the paycheck? And you say the item is create a paycheck replacement plan. How do you do that?
So there's a number of ways to do it. We typically find that clients and people want to have that monthly income coming in almost like a paycheck is coming.
Steady.
Yeah. So if you're using the investment account, whichever one makes most sense for you to take the distributions from, to set it up on a monthly basis, just going into the bank account, or maybe twice a month if you're used to seeing direct deposit as if you're still getting that normal paycheck. And one thing I would recommend if you're not doing is to have the taxes withheld up front. So your custodian or your financial advisor can withhold the federal and state taxes if that's applicable to you. And fun fact is that those withholdings actually count for your estimated payments along the way.
Right. So there's no big surprise bill come April. Right.
So you'll get a 1099 at the end of the year that you distributed X amount, and Y and Z was held for federal and for state.
Yep. So you talk about this a lot with replacing that paycheck and creating some steady income. You know, I think about, we talk about the income stability ratio of, all right, of your monthly or annual living expenses, how much of that do you want to come from more guaranteed sources? And I think about Social Security, pensions, and depending on what that adds up to, 40 to 60% of your income to be sort of stable and predictable. And if Social Security and pensions are less than that, that's where you could think about an annuity to replace some of that and create some income floor to replace that paycheck.
Yeah, the flooring strategy is great, especially going into retirement. It is a lot of psychological where you're like, oh, all my money is tied to the investment accounts. If that's going down, then maybe you're losing sleep at night. So that income floor can just, dollars are coming into the household no matter what's happening into the market.
And to be clear to our audience, we are not annuity salespeople. We don't do these things. We haven't written an annuity in 10 years. We're just seeing that the landscape has changed with all the boomers retiring. There are better annuity products out there, lower in cost. They're not predatory, and they have some really nice guarantees, especially with rates having gone up in the last couple of years. So.
And I mean, it could, if part of your goals is to grow your liquid net worth as much as possible, it could allow you to be more aggressive in your investment portfolio.
Okay, next checklist item is you got to figure out what to do with your old 401k. What are your thoughts there?
A few things. I mean, so you've got options, pros and cons, obviously, with these things. You could leave the old 401k where it's at, or you could roll it. I guess the pro there is that you know the plan, you've been there for years, but the con is that you're limited to the investment options on that plan. Or you could roll it into an IRA. So the IRA is going to give you more flexibility. Now you can choose any investment option out there to accomplish your goals. But there could be higher fees in the IRA depending. But one thing I would recommend is not having both. So don't keep your 401k and don't have an IRA. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're being diversified. Like that. you could have overlap and redundancies by having two different strategies there.
Right.
But the other thing to keep in mind is that, let's say when you do get to that required minimum distribution age, for whatever reason, you cannot consolidate the total required distribution with a 401k and an IRA. So now you're having to do some accounting and make sure that you take the required distribution from the 401k and one from the IRA.
It's a headache.
And I don't recommend doing this either, but let's say you had two IRAs.
Yeah.
That's the one you could just total the total RMD for those two accounts and take the distribution for one. But I would like to see, going into retirement, simplifying things. You don't need to be worrying about these nuances along the way.
And when people have the old 401ks, I typically recommend consolidate those things, put it in one IRA, use ETFs, exchange traded funds, low cost. They trade for free. I mean, that's really for ease of efficiency, for better organization, better investment experience. Altogether, I think it's a better way to go, with one really important exception. So if you're retiring before the age of 59 and a half, that's the one exception where I say your last employer-sponsored 401k plan, consider leaving dollars in that plan only, because if you retire at 55 or later, you can access money from that 401k without any penalty.
Yeah, that's perfect. And you made a big point there, is that it has to be the employer that you left at that time. So do you know, though, I'm curious, for the audience out there, if they retire from that 401k, can they roll dollars into that 401k and then have more flexibility?
Prior to retirement.
Yes. Okay, great. So again, you need to just be prepared of what you're trying to accomplish.
When you got to have a plan. You got to know how much money do you need to live on from 55 to 59 and a half. Work backwards, put a little inflation number on that, and then that's the number that you need in that last 401k plan from work. But you can't retire at 54 and 9 months or whatever. It's got to be 55.
So draw that line in the sand, get to 55, and you're good to go.
Right.
Another thing, if you have a 457 plan, this is one thing I learned, and we had to make some adjustments with one of our clients, is that they typically have a traditional 457, and then they also have a Roth 457. So you have the same options similar to a 401k.
Yeah.
The 457 allows you to tap into the assets before 59 and a half as well.
Penalty free.
Penalty free.
Right.
But here's the thing that you need to know, is that the traditional 457 has that rule. The Roth 457 has a penalty if you do before 59 and a half, at least as of right now, which makes zero sense.
Yeah.
And
so many rules.
So the planning point there is that we've seen people heavily putting dollars into Roth because we've coached and it said, hey, this is a great spot, but we had to shift to make sure that they had enough money when they got to retirement.
In the traditional, right. Perfect. Okay, so the next item on the checklist is people need to have a multi-year tax plan and tax projection. And explain a little bit about what the thought process is there.
Yeah, like we mentioned earlier, I mean, a lot of people are going to be running into these required distributions in the future.
And they're going to be shocked at how big the tax bill is.
You may not think so, but I promise you, more than likely, you will be shocked.
Yeah.
And so the multi-year planning is to say, well, let's see what's going to be well into the future to make sure what we're doing today can help reduce that or maybe even eliminate that.
We're seeing people jump sometimes 2 tax brackets as soon as they hit RMD age. And yet now in the early stage of retirement, they're in these lower brackets. So make hay while the sun shines. Either do the conversions or take out distributions and use that to live on at the lower brackets.
Absolutely. And so making sure you're planning for that and working with a good tax professional or your CPA.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of these people are focusing on last year or just right now, and that's great, saving taxes today, but they're blinded by the light that's well into the future.
Well, to me, that's kind of like driving your car while looking in the rear view mirror.
Yeah,
Could you
not going to be a
Most
good idea.
CPAs do that. I know, but the good ones are doing forward-looking projections.
And I'm hoping, we do this a lot, is working in tandem with people's CPAs to make sure we're all on the same page, rowing in the same direction to make people's plans come to life and save taxes. So I think it's really important who you're surrounding yourself with and building your financial planning team.
Yeah. And then on that checklist, I think it goes part and parcel. You got to know when your RMDs start. So it depends on your birthday. You touched on it, 1960 or later, it's age 75. Before 60, it's going to be 73. You need to understand how to calculate those RMDs and make sure you're getting them out by the end of the year, because there's penalties.
It's hefty too. So it's 25%. And when I tell people that, they're shocked. You should see how big their eyes get.
Yeah.
And then I come over and I say, well, it used to be 50. So this is actually a pretty good discount with a 25% penalty. But don't ever expose yourself to that.
And then you touched on this earlier, but the next checklist item is making sure that you are having the proper withholdings or paying in the right amount of estimated taxes to be penalty proof.
Mm-hmm. Again, I would go into the multi-year tax planning is to see what is your effective tax rate. So what we don't know, or a lot of people are misunderstood about, is the tax code is that the marginal rate is the next dollar you make is taxed at that, but you really want to kind of look at the average of what your tax rate is and maybe withhold that for federal and get some state tax withholdings as well.
Okay. Next one on the checklist. What are your thoughts about asset location? And let's define this. We all know what asset allocation means. It means don't put all your eggs in one basket and have lots of different asset classes. Big companies, small companies, stocks, bonds, cash, real estate, international, emerging markets. Be well diversified. We know that.
Yeah.
What does asset location mean?
Yeah, it's a great question. It seemed pretty simple, but basically you're taking your tax inefficient vehicles and putting them in qualified accounts like your IRAs and 401ks.
So tax inefficient would be things that throw off ordinary income, like interest from corporate debt, REITs, fairly tax inefficient.
Right, and then putting your tax efficient things in your taxable accounts, and that way these little details along the way can actually save you and grow your wealth more.
Oh yeah, Vanguard did that great study, and I think asset location was going to add like 0.4 or 0.5% per year of less tax drag, like better performance because there's less tax drag because you're smart about where you located your
and
assets.
Just that alone is half the cost of your advisor. So
Right,
I mean,
right.
Good deals looking at that, but just making sure that the whole piece of the pie is working together.
Right. Okay, let's transition a little bit and let's talk about insurances. And let's start with if you retire before 65, so you're Medicare eligible at 65, and you got to have a plan in place for what kind of health insurance you're going to get if you retire before 65. So you've got you can go to the open marketplace. You could go on Cobra from your last employer, which you got 18 months, pretty expensive. You can get the same coverage you had while you were working. But you got to have a plan of what are you going to do for health insurance before 65, and then you need to have a plan for what are you going to do around Medicare.
Right. So before 65, I mean, the number may be shocking, but we're looking at $1,000 per person per month.
Per month,
so,
and that better be in your budget.
Yeah, and that's average. I mean, there could be some less, there could be some more expensive, but at least having some kind of gauge of if you are retiring before before 65, before Medicare, that you account for that expense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then going into Medicare, something that you need to keep in mind is that you'll have that $12,000 or $24,000 a year expense drop off, and then you'll switch over to Medicare. And if you just stick with basic Medicare and you don't take Social Security, you're going to have to keep in mind that the Part B premiums are going to be coming out of pocket until you turn on Social Security.
And then something on Medicare that ties back into your tax projections and the other checklist item of which accounts to take money from is be aware of the impact of extra income on Medicare in the form of IRMAA, which is income-related monthly adjustment amounts. Essentially, it's a surcharge on Medicare, and it can make your Medicare quite expensive if you're not careful.
Yeah, and the real age you want to start looking at income is 63.
Why?
Because Medicare has a 2-year look back. So every year they're looking back 2 years. And so what you do today, again, going back to the multi-year tax planning, is to make sure that you're not creating any of these landmines.
Right.
But a lot of new financial planning topics have arisen too, because we have now the enhanced senior deduction.
Right.
Which if you're 65 and your income is below a certain amount, each of you can take a $6,000 deduction.
Yeah.
Over and above the standard deduction. So if you start making too much income or doing too big of Roth conversions, you need to be aware that you may be reducing that standard deduction because there is a phase out when it comes to that.
So we could add to the checklist, be aware of the new legislation from One Big Beautiful Bill because it has changed the landscape. And to even make it more confusing, it's not permanent. There's different phase out years for each of these things.
Yeah, so start reading because there's 70,000 pages in there.
Okay, let's talk about Social Security, and the checklist item is you got to have a good claiming strategy or timing strategy around Social Security. And so we look at this look, it all comes down to how long are you going to live. And you got a lot of people out there that just want to grab their benefit at 62 because, hey, they're worried that it's going to go broke or bankrupt. We've shot some videos on this. Social Security is not going away. But what it really comes down to is how long are people going to live? And that's really, so what are your thoughts on a good Social Security strategy?
Yeah, I think it determines when each person should take it as well. Like if there's a smaller benefit and you do want to get some extra income, maybe you turn on the claim the smaller benefit and delay the bigger one.
Right.
That could make sense. But I mean, really, we need to look at, like you've said, life expectancy and break-even points depending on people's plans could 78 to 82, 83.
Right.
And if you're going to live over that, which we argue all the time, most likely. You are going to live over that, then the benefits are going to pay out more over time.
Right.
And that can add to your flooring strategy, which then can in turn put less stress on the investment portfolio.
Yeah.
So.
And if you're married, it's a two-person decision because the higher benefit is going to survive over the second life expectancy. So if the higher one is good, by delaying it, then whoever lives the longest will get to enjoy that. That's the survivor benefit.
Yeah, that's a good point because a lot of people think that you get both benefits when one passed away, but really you just take the higher of the two, like you said.
Okay, next checklist item is to pay off the mortgage or to not pay off the mortgage before retirement. What are your thoughts?
So again, going back to it depends. But as a financial planner or someone that likes math, they're going to look at the interest rate and they're going to see what kind of returns you can get in the market.
So if you locked in 2021 or before and you're below 3%, that's a low interest rate. And if you could go to Schwab and park your cash and get 4%, you're making money on the bank.
But so I always go back to what are the client's goals? What is helping them get that peace of mind? Because
what's going to help you sleep at night?
Right, because maybe you're financially doing a better job by getting the 1% higher by just keeping that interest rate. But if they can just pay it off and have zero debt, not owe anybody, sail into the sunset in retirement, that could be better.
We were in a meeting the other day with a client who had a below 3% interest rate, and he just said writing that or watching that check go out of his bank pissed him off. And so we said, well, great. It's not worth the angst, it's just pay the thing off. And he literally was high-fiving us.
Yes.
So to your point, it really does depend. It's not necessarily cut and dry. It's what's most appropriate.
I think with every decision along the way in your plan, you need to look at all the scenarios and then pros and cons for each of them and then tie that to your goals and values to see what makes most sense for you.
Okay. Checklist item. Should someone get more conservative with their investments, kind of asset allocation, risk decisions? What does that look like in your mind?
Yeah, that can make sense too. Again, we want to just make sure that we're not getting too conservative too soon because we do need that portfolio to going back to the beginning of the show of inflation. We need your portfolio to beat inflation, your purchasing power strong. So if you get too conservative, I mean, the dollar amount could stay the same, but that purchasing power is being diminished every year that we're going on.
Absolutely. And we have a saying around here that retirement is not the finish line. It's truly the starting line of potentially 30 years of having to replace your paycheck and your income.
Yeah.
And it needs to rise. So don't get too conservative, but do have a plan around that.
Absolutely. And it can all depend on what other flooring strategies you have in place and how it can be designed, but not cookie cutter, I guess is the short answer.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of a plan, as you head into retirement, people need to review and have their estate plan updated. So if you don't have a living trust, consider getting one, especially if you own a home. Make sure you have a will in place, a power of attorney, an advanced health care directive, all the things to ensure that your wishes get carried out when you pass.
Well, and even more simple than that seems trivial, but to look at beneficiaries in all your accounts as well.
Absolutely.
Believe it or not, we see people running into it and they're like, oh, that person's no longer with us.
Or the ex-wife got my money.
And that beneficiary tied to the investment accounts will be over and above what's written in court documents. So you need to be very careful.
And then on that note, I'd say make sure you have a contingent beneficiary. So let's say you're married and you have kids. Your spouse would be your primary. Name the kids as contingent as long as they're kind of sound mind and body and they're not little kids. I'd rather name people rather than a trust.
Absolutely, especially on your qualified accounts like your IRAs, just because tax advantages, we want to make sure that no matter what, it's going most tax efficiently being passed on.
Yeah.
If kids are not financially stable or minors, then it could make sense to name your trust as the contingent. But yeah, as soon as you can, get people named as those beneficiaries.
Absolutely. Okay, last couple things here. So this is a big one. It's to just review and simplify your accounts, meaning we talked about it earlier, but if you have a bunch of old 401ks, if you've got a bunch of IRAs, and they're at different custodians, different places, and you think you're diversified, you're crazy. There's overlap, redundancy, there's excess fees. You're shooting yourself sometimes 2% a year is what we see.
Yeah, consolidate, make your life simple. I mean, what your goal is to not have to worry about this stuff. Let's make it simple and go into retirement.
For the people that just spend all day doing their finances, my thought to them is, you got to get better hobbies. Let's add that to the checklist. Get some better hobbies.
There we go. That should be the last one. Get some better hobbies if you're looking into this.
Even if it's gardening, but to your point, no, I think a really important one that we probably should have put at the very top is, what are you going to do when every day is Saturday?
And people, this is a hard one for them. You think that you're going to golf every day or go swimming every day or to whatever.
Or vacation every day, whatever.
And when you start putting things on a calendar, there is a lot of white space when every day is a Saturday.
Absolutely. And while you're working and you're grinding, maybe you're tired, maybe you're burned out, you've been doing it a long time, and you're thinking, oh, that sounds, Matt, are you kidding me? I could golf every day, or I could go on cruises every week, whatever. But the reality is, what people need in retirement, we've just seen it they need meaning, they need purpose, and they need to have a little passion.
Yes. Yeah.
And so figuring out, identifying what are the areas in your life that are going to give you meaning and purpose. It can be anything. It could be volunteering. It could be spending time, maybe more time at church, or diving deeper into your faith. It could be giving back to the family or spending time with the grandkids. Reconnecting with friends that you haven't seen in a while.
Absolutely, yeah. And then tying this all the way back to the very beginning with that bad B word is that if every day is a Saturday, you may be spending more dollars. So take that into account when you're trying to piece this all together.
Absolutely. So give this some thought. And hey, if you're the kind of person that if you just enjoy working and you're having a hard time thinking about retirement, maybe you want to work part-time to give you some extra spending money or just give you something to do. And there's nothing wrong with any of these things. It's just identifying and getting clear on who you are as a person, what's important to you, what drives you. And truly, this is really so for anybody who listened to the end, you're getting the most golden nugget right here at the end. But listen, this is a great checklist. Yep. I think if people can execute on this, they're going to be in fantastic shape for retirement. And thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. As you just heard, there's a lot to do before you head off into Margaritaville or your version of retirement. And if we've uncovered anything today that you have questions on or concerns about or just need some help with, feel free to reach out. You can get to us at team@seasidewealth.com or check out our website, seasidewealth.com. And if you're on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe the channel and share with anyone who can benefit. And for those of you on Spotify, give us a follow. Talk to you soon.